What is going on? It's Alex coming back at you with another video, and today we're going to be breaking down the Draft Network's brand new 2025 NFL mock draft. If you are new, feel free to like, comment, and subscribe. Below my face is my board. As I continue doing reevaluations, it will continue to shift. These are actual reflections of my real All-22 grades, so I know you'll disagree with them, and that's okay. But it's there because, unlike many others, I will always be fully transparent with exactly what my views are at all moments, even if I want to kind of curve it more towards the reality of what the draft will happen and what the consensus likes to say. But randomly, for some reason, every single year, there's guys on day 3 who end up being better than guys even on day 1. So before we get all crazy, just got to understand, maybe I mean, there's a good chance I'm wrong on certain guys I love, but there's also a chance I'm right. So let's be respectful. Let's have a good time, good discourse. Starting out with the number 1 overall pick, the Giants end up trading up to the number 1 pick to select Shedeur Sanders. This is a significant amount of draft capital for a team in the Giants that, if I'm going to be real, God forbid you keep Daniel Jones, but technically, if you did, this 2026 first could be Arch Manning. I'm just putting that out there. That's just a lot of draft capital to move up for Shedeur Sanders. And Shedeur's my QB1. It's been a long journey, but it eventually got there. And, I just don't necessarily believe that this is remotely worth it. And again, Shedeur's my QB1. So I think that's already a massive expenditure, which, props, by the way, to the Draft Network for being fully transparent with what trade package they offer. Sometimes it's just like, oh, well, like they're trading up to 1. It's like, with what? So I do appreciate that, but that is just so much to move up that I personally don't see the return on investment. The Titans then go Abdul Carter at number 2. I'm personally fine with this one. I do think that Travis Hunter would be a dream target as a wide receiver for the Titans in that Brian Callahan system, but I would not disagree with Abdul Carter one bit. Cam Ward then goes to the Browns. He needs more time to continue developing. He's done a good job over his college career doing that, but I think I can continue seeing him take those steps as Deshaun Watson is on his way out. Then we have the Vegas Raiders going Jalen Milroe. Feel free to check out my quarterback video. It's over an hour long. I'm just not super high on Jalen Milroe. And he used to be my QB1 for right after the Georgia game. I was like, all right, let's do it. But just as a passer, I think that he is just so underdeveloped that he needs to go to a situation like Cleveland for him to sit, wait, develop, and I don't think that's representative of a first-round pick. He is a dynamic athlete that is arguably one of the best that we've seen maybe since Lamar Jackson. It's slipping my mind right now if we've seen a better athlete / playmaker with their legs than Jalen Milroe, but that doesn't really move the needle for me when a quarterback's job is to throw the ball, because Lamar has done a fantastic job, not just because of his legs, it's how he was effective early, but he's done so much for his arm, with his arm, that's why he is the great player that he is. So I think a team like the Browns in round 2 or the end of round 1, if they really wanted to trade up and get that 5th year, would be the best return on investment for both Milroe as well as a team like the Browns that probably would need less of a day 1 quarterback with Cam Ward. But again, I understand if you don't want Deshaun Watson taking a snap for you, then not going to shame you for it. The Jaguars then also move back and then end up getting Travis Hunter out of the deal. That would be an unbelievable fleece, in my opinion. I just don't really see. I see the Giants moving up potentially to 2 or maybe 3, but and New York paid a heavy price just to fill a position with someone who I like, but don't necessarily have the full confidence in the way that some other people do. But the Jaguars end up fleecing and getting a great pick. The Patriots then select Will Campbell. I've been extremely in favor of Will Campbell. Continue to like him, but I've also, by the way, implemented, if you guys see how Will Campbell fell, it wasn't a reevaluation. I just ended up talking about this multiple times. I've given guards too much weight, and guards are just naturally positions that slip. So I ended up actually dropping their positional value. So it wasn't a reevaluation that dropped the guards. It is primarily just a shift of their overall weight. But I think Will Campbell is a hard guard in the NFL. That's a weird way to phrase it, but I'm pretty damn sure he's going to be a guard. I don't really see very much wiggle room for him as a tackle based on the deficiencies they continue showing week in and week out. I think that he'll be a really good guard, and I don't think the Patriots are out of a need for guard, but I do think you have a lot of guys that, in my opinion, Caden Wallace especially, should be looking to that interior. The Jets then go Mikael Williams. I'm not really huge on this personally. Not a really big fan of this pick. I think there are a lot of other higher value options, including Will Johnson, that you can pair up with Sauce Gardner for the future with DJ Reed on the way out. Not really necessarily going to be a huge fan of that, especially because Mikael hasn't been a big playmaker this year. Like, there's just a certain point where you can't solely go after the athlete. You got to go after production as well. At 8, Carolina Panthers go Will Johnson. They're going best player available. I'm not shaming it. Of course, Dallas Cowboys then go Ashton Jeanty, because every single mock draft will have Ashton Jeanty going to the Cowboys. It's the dream fit. But also, I do want to emphasize this. We talk about him as the best running back that we've ever seen. Why are we not putting him in the conversation with where he could go, which was where Saquon Barkley went? And you can't try to act like that draft was bereft of talent, right? Saquon went at number 2. That class still had someone who was coming in as a guard into the NFL that people said would be wearing a gold jacket day one in Quentin Nelson. There's Bradley Chubb in there, who is a fantastic edge rusher. There's so many players that came out in that draft that were very talented players, and he still went at number 2. Why do people not understand? And I'm not talking about this mock draft. I'm talking about the community in general. Why do people not understand that the NFL will value a running back different than what you and I do? I get it. I mean, to be fair, I'm actually the one who values running back apparently more than the consensus. But when you have a running back that's like Ashton Jeanty, that you think about CMC, you think about Saquon Barkley, these backs that are truly transcendent to the committee groups, they are the reason you win games. It's just the threshold is so high because there's a lot of really good committees for running backs to be able to breach it to actually be worth that value. But Ashton Jeanty does. He probably was better than CMC in college. I didn't watch CMC. He's probably better than Saquon in college. I wasn't even into college at the time. So keep that in mind. Like, the last time that we saw somebody remotely close was Bijan Robinson, Jahmyr Gibbs. Those two almost went at 6 and 8 respectively. Don't try to act like it's out of this world for Ashton Jeanty to go in the top 5. You'd be doing yourself a disservice. But regardless, Ashton Jeanty is a fantastic running back, and the Cowboys would be hitting a home run here because I think that's a massive vacancy with a player that really could redefine the Cowboys' offensive identity. T-Mac then goes to the New Orleans Saints. Ooh, beautiful for me to steal. That might be going on the thumbnail. But Tedro McMillan goes to the Saints. It's a pick I fully support. He's done so much better in terms of explosiveness as a route runner this year. I was watching defensive backs, which I have somebody in my chat who always talks about Preston Hodge. You can take a peek at number 19. But regardless, I ended up seeing him through watching all the other defensive backs, and I was like, woof. He's improved so much over the year. Like, people came into the year thinking that he's like the second coming of Jesus, and it's like, no, the dude sucked at running routes, didn't run 100% the whole time, was pretty much having zero separation the whole time. But the way that in the very limited sample size of what I've seen through watching defensive backs that he's done this year, he's done so much more as becoming an NFL receiver than he was last year, which was just a really good college receiver. So I fully support it. TBD if I really think he's worth the number 10 overall pick, but in this class, I'm not going to shame him. At number 11, we got the Dolphins going Malachi Starks, safety out of Georgia. I think this is perfectly fine. You look at what the Dolphins are needing. I think defensive interior and safety are two of the top positions. And I personally think Mason Graham would be the better value, but Malachi Starks, far from a bad one. A very talented player, can play multiple positions. You're not going to be regretting it. At number 12, the Bengals then go Mason Graham, who gets to pair up with Chris Jenkins Jr. I'm a fan of that one personally just because of the fact that A, this team needs defensive interior, but B, you get instant chemistry for two young guys on your team as well. Granted, Chris Jenkins hasn't been nearly as talented or nearly as effective as I was hoping for early, but at the same time, he is in a rotation there. At 13, you got the Buccaneers going Jalen Walker. It's a pick I make all the time. Not going to shame this one whatsoever. So pick number 14, we got the Bears going Wyatt Milam. My only problem is this dude probably has sub NFL tackle length. So can you justify spending pick 14 on a guard? I don't know. Personally, I know Wyatt Milam's done a phenomenal job this year, so it very well could be that way. And I owe Wyatt Milam a reevaluation, especially through the lens of him being a potential guard. So He could end up, based on his play this year, be worth this pick. It's just for the Bears specifically, I don't know. I'd rather have a pure offensive tackle and then just basically put him to guard because we are so talented at left tackle that we don't need to go after a guard. Then pretty much saying, I pray to God the left tackle, like Karan Abagaji, gets to develop, and then Wyatt Milam's just going to be the consistent guard. I really would like a little bit more flexibility than that. But Wyatt Milam is far from a bad pick because of how damn well he has played this year. Shamar Stewart then goes to the Colts at 15. He's a freak athlete for the size. I wouldn't be too surprised based on post-combine hype if we do see him really take a big step up. Since Fisher's been gone, the whole entire Texas A&M defense has just been turning it on, respectively. So good for them. They've been doing a fantastic job overall. Then you got the Seahawks going Kelvin Banks here, coming off a 2-sack week, 4 pressures allowed. I think this is perfectly reasonable, perfectly logical, but it is certainly interesting that the Kelvin Banks hype has started to die down. A lot of people had him like pretty much a lock top 5 for a minute, and now he's pretty much sitting here in that 10 to 20 range. I don't even know if I'm fully there yet, but for the Seahawks, getting anything to upgrade their offensive line is great, and so they end up sniping themselves a really good one there. The Rams then go Luther Burden here. So technically, if the Cooper Kupp does become a cap casualty, this fits right in. I mean, great after the catch, but I honestly, similar to the Steelers, the Rams are one of those teams where I don't think you take a wide receiver round 1 for them. I just don't see the need for it. I also could see them going after a tight end round 1, even though Colby Parkinson, they gave him that contract. Shout out to my former high school teammate. But, I think that the Rams could be in a position, based on how they like Brock Bowers, to look at, what is in this draft with Colston Loveland as well as Tyler Warren. But you could end up seeing that route. I just think that stick to your strengths, and go after round 1 at wide receiver. They're really good at evaluating it. Outside of Tutu Atwell, and even Tutu's had some really solid resurgent weeks. You've proven to be able to have a good eye for gem talent. So don't really force the need right here. Even though I love Luther Burden, there's just a lot of really good depth talent in this class. At 18, the Niners go James Pierce. Dude, he's my number 2 player. The Niners get him here. Not going to complain. Not really the body type I'd expect, but I think that, you're getting yourself an amazing deal on an amazing player at a high value position. The Broncos then go Colston Loveland. Based on how Tyler Warren is also a former quarterback, I don't think Sean Payton could resist going after Tyler Warren. It just really does feel like Taysom Hill 2.0, but, actually capable of playing tight end more than just being a weird hybrid quarterback weapon. So I think that would be a little bit more realistic, but I personally think tight end certainly is on the market based on the fact they've wanted to get rid of Dolchich even at the trade deadline. 20, the Falcons go Princely Umamielen. I think there are better edge rushers in the class, but if Princely goes late 1, it's not going to surprise me. He's done a fantastic job in terms of beating up on college tackles. I just don't know how much it translates to the NFL in terms of the pace of the NFL as well as the talent. Then we got the Texans going Walter Nolan here, defensive interior out of Ole Miss. I think defensive interior is a move that makes perfect sense for the Texans. I'd probably go Kenneth Grant just because Kenneth has an extra 40 pounds on Walter Nolan, or maybe it's 35. But that aside, I just love Kenneth Grant, especially with D'Amico Ryans. But this is a perfectly fine pick. The Cardinals then go Nick Scorton at 22. It's a little bit interesting going back-to-back years with a 280-plus pound edge rusher, and one of them got kicked to the inside. Maybe Scorton wouldn't be on that same route, and maybe because he is a little more athletic than Robinson is, he could end up sticking to the outside. But, I think they're just getting pretty much air quotes the scraps, because I think ideally you'd want Jalen Walker, James Pierce, or of course Abdul Carter, who can play more of that role that you wanted with BJ Ojolari, Xavier Thomas, etc. 23, you got the Commanders going Siobhan Revell Jr. I'm going to be honest, I never fully bought into the hype with Siobhan. He was, I think, corner 14 for me coming into the year, because after my corners video, I ended up studying him, and he's a good player. He is a good player. Don't get me wrong. There's a lot of potential there. 6'3", 193, I think. And, it sucks that he tore his ACL. But for the Commanders that have now invested a third and a fourth round pick into that corner position with Marshawn Lattimore for the long run, with seeing how Mikey has done so well as well at developing surprisingly very fast, I don't really see the need to push this. And with the edge talent necessarily, I guess you guys have been making pretty much air quotes bums into legitimate Pro Bowl potential. But imagine if you can get LT Overton on this squad. If you can make Fowler into a stud, you can make LT Overton into one. So I think it would be almost a disservice to Dan Quinn to go after cornerback over an edge rusher and giving him a real bonus piece. Then we got the Ravens going Josh Simmons here, a fantastic move. You guys know exactly what I think because, well, that's why I have my board below my face. Josh Simmons is a fantastic offensive lineman. I think he could end up kicking to guard if need be, but I really do have faith in him as an offensive tackle. I ended up saying that he's a blue chip tackle and potentially even better as a guard. Then you got the Chargers going after the sexy pick with Kenneth Grant. I think Harbaugh would be in a very tough position looking between Tyler Warren and Kenneth Grant. Of course, defensive interior is not something the Chargers have pretty much had in a probably half decade to a decade. I always remember defensive interior being the issue for the Chargers, so I certainly could see that being their final nail, so to speak, to be able to put into that defensive line. Of course, you could also be looking for future edge rushing talent, but we've seen a lot of those go off the board already. Ben Morrison then goes to the Green Bay Packers. I always consider him as returning just because he's a true junior and ended up having a season-ending injury, but if the Packers can snipe at 26, I am not going to complain. The Steelers then go on Emeka Egbuka at 27. I'm going to do this argument one more time. And I talked about it with Broshmo. I've talked about it on my recent mock draft. But I am not a fan of this move at 27. And it's for two primary reasons. One, similar to the Rams, the Steelers organization has been fantastic at finding really good value after round one. Stick to your strengths. You can't really draft certain positions very well past round one. Maybe spend a round one pick on that. If you can do really well with the day 2 and 3 picks on those positions, maybe, especially if the value isn't overwhelming, don't put that position as that first round pick, right? Wait for that day 2 and day 3 to get your really good value. Now, for Emeka Egbuka, the primary argument that people make, because I say, why are we going after another slot receiver? Emeka Egbuka has played there for 2 years in a row now. Like, I liked him when he was a boundary with JSN in the slot, but you are forcing Emeka to go out of his native position. Because, yes, you might say, like, oh, fuck Roman Wilson. I'm going to be 100% honest with you. How dumb does that sound? You just spend a third-round pick on somebody who just hasn't been healthy, and you're just like, well, we don't have a boundary receiver still, but we're just going to say, screw you. No, that's just bad asset management, guys. Come on. It's not right. And again, there's people who I absolutely love who make this pick. So this is far from on Mello here, far from on Justin here. So this is just an overarching complaint of the community. You end up bringing up this argument that, oh, we were looking for Christian Kirk at the trade deadline before he got hurt. Think about the fact that, hey, we got Mike Williams, right? We didn't care about, like, when you acquire Mike Williams, when you look at Christian Kirk, those guys are for this year because Roman Wilson wasn't going to be there. They were going to be short-term fills for a positional need that's going to be far longer than the short term. So there's still going to be that need there. Emeka is not a short-term fill. That's what Roman Wilson, when healthy, is. You need to look at a boundary receiver, which there are a lot of them in this class. If the Steelers can trade out of the first, get a good amount of draft capital, and then get someone like Jaden Higgins, by all means. But to end up having now Roman Wilson, Calvin Austin, and Emeka Egbuka in the slot, while you primarily have Van Jefferson and George Pickens on the boundary, and I'm trying to remember if Van Jefferson's even on contract after this year, I personally think that is poor asset management. At 27, I'm not taking Emeka Egbuka and trying to see if he can work at the NFL level as a boundary when I only get to watch who he was 2.5 years ago at that same position. There's my long spiel, but it does matter to me. This is my team. I really do think that there is going to be a route for the Steelers to go after a receiver. And if Emeka is there, let's just say in the second round, the mid-second, by all means. But that's when the value outweighs what you're actually debating right there, right? So that's why I'm not a huge fan of this pick. And again, this is not on Justin at all. This is a, community-wide pick. This is not his pick. It's just overall, I am not a fan of it. And that's my big reasoning why. The Vikings then go Derek Harmon. Defensive interior has been a position the Vikings have been trying to fill for quite a while now. So perfectly fine with getting pass rush, especially for Brian Flores when he runs all these unique defensive schemes. I love the fact that a high pass rush win rate defensive interior could be a new variable to add into that equation. Then we got the Eagles going Jonas Avenia here. He would end up being a right guard, eventual right tackle, and I love the fact that you could have that flexibility. However, for the Eagles, we have now proven with Mekhi Becton, who is one of the highest graded guards in the NFL, that And then you also have Steen there. That Stout U doesn't really need to spend high value picks on guards. Spend it on offensive tackles. And yeah, you could say Jonas Savania could be that, but a lot of people are even saying we don't even have confidence in him as a tackle. And if you're taking this pick, it's not for him to be a tackle. It's for him to be a short-term guard to tackle replacement. At 29, when you have all these other players available, you think LT Overton's still on the board. You also talk about how Tyler Warren, if I'm not mistaken, is Tyler Warren still on the board? So with those two players there who fill both the Josh Sweat role as well as the future Dallas Goedert role, it is almost impossible for me to wrap my head around the idea of Jonas Savania. In the second round, I am all in favor of this, right? Because again, like it's not the exact pick of Eagles Jonah. It's first round Eagles Jonah. Because I don't really love the depth in this class at that point. You can talk also about JT Tuimoloau here. And so it's like for the Eagles, I think have much more pressing issues at much more valuable positions in the short run, as well as potentially the long. I just don't really see this as the proper value. In a draft like last year's, where we had actual good offensive tackle talent, I think Jonah would have been day 3. That's what it is. He's a really good player, but you know, in a class that actually represents an upgradable class for the NFL, where you're going to net positive by going after these guys compared to like value-wise, you can get like day 2 players on day 3, so to speak. It's not going to be remotely the same way this year. So you got to be able to look at that and evaluate it, and I just am not a huge fan of that. Then the Bills go Max Hairston. He is my next reevaluation. I actually already have it cooked up over here, so TBD on that, but I didn't get that vibe from Max, and I love Kentucky defenders. I did not get that necessarily, but I know it's based primarily on if Rasul ends up dipping, because right now Benford and why am I forgetting the other corner's name? Both of those guys have been able to develop very, very well. So Max Hairston, though, he's a good corner. It's just, again, in a class like this where I'm starting to see a lot of really good corners that get no respect, like slipping to day 3, I don't see the value of him here on day 1. Then you got Josh Connerly to the Chiefs. I think Chiefs fans are just kind of tired of the offensive tackle experiment. And with Josh Connerly potentially even having to kick into guard because he is a little bit smaller, his anchor's not necessarily great. I love him personally, but at 31, you start having to toss in those variables into the equation where maybe it would just be good to say, hey, Broncos, here's a middle finger. We're going to pick up Garrett Bowles in free agency and have him run for a championship where we can fill our need with good value at a veteran offensive tackle position as we have Sua Matea and Morris be able to develop. And then at 32, we have the Detroit Lions going Landon Jackson. Landon Jackson's a great player. I'm not going to try to crap on him at all. For me, again, I have a couple other players I have above him. LT Overton is 1, as well as JT Tuimoloau is 2. I think I have a couple other guys as well. But those aside, I think Landon Jackson's a perfect fit for the Lions because he's a very high-motored player. He's a unique build, but he's also physical in the aspect that he's both athletic as well as strong. And that could end up leaning towards a really, really good addition there. I was hoping they got Marshawn Kneeland at the end of the first round last year, but you know, they ended up not doing that, and that's perfectly fine. They got Terry and Arnold, which you guys know my thoughts on that, but it is what it is. Because I love Terry and Arnold, but I was kind of hoping that they would get Quinn Mitchell. I'll leave it there, but Landon Jackson would work quite well. So that's going to be the video. Thank you so much for watching. I love you. See you on the far side. Peace.